Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today we will be going over the Week 4 rankings for the quarterbacks and the tight ends. And there's really no injuries or interesting usage to talk about for the quarterbacks. We will get to a new quarterback option that's out there in Jackson Dart eventually. I'm not getting too crazy high up on him. Definitely somebody I think worth getting on a roster if your quarterback position is not completely set. Does come with some rushing upside. The matchups for a while are really tough. Throughout the back end of the season, not so bad. So, somebody, if you've got some room, put him on your roster. And he could end up paying off for you. And he's got New Orleans next week, so that could be nice. At least I believe that is correct. So let's just get right on into the quarterback rankings with my first tier, and I'll explain quickly what you're seeing on the screen. So I explained in a lot of the videos, spread, implied point total. Actually, can we hide that? Now my window's way too big, but oh well. So for the spread implied point total here, obviously just green's going to be good. Red is going to be bad. This has to do more with game flow. This has to do more with touchdown upside, scoring upside for these guys. But over here we have my average fantasy points per week on a point scale based on consistency. So it's a scale from 0 to 36. The numbers just don't matter as much for you as what the coloring looks like, and this is based on what they've done so far on the season for their scoring. So that just helps us to, a little guide over there for how well they've done. I'm sure we have a good idea, especially at the top here, of how well these guys have been. So this is my first tier. These are the guys who I'm not going to just outright say I'm starting without thinking about it, but it's my first tier. And at the top here, of course, we are starting them without thinking about it. We're going to put in Jalen Hurts. We're going to play Josh Allen, my QB2. We're going to play my QB3, the number one quarterback on the season, Lamar Jackson, up against Kansas City. It's a good defense, but, we're okay with playing him. Jordan Love here, I have in at my QB4 this week, going up against Dallas. Looks to be maybe the second highest implied point total. They should be able to throw all over them. So expecting, at worst, an okay game from Jordan Love. The bust potential seems quite low here in this game. Justin Herbert, same idea here going up against the New York Giants. Caleb Williams, he's been fantastic going up against Vegas. Here we go. We got Jaden Daniels up here. It's not a guarantee that Jaden Daniels is going to play this week. I think he is. It's also I would say maybe closer to a probability that he won't quite be himself on the ground. I still probably want to play him. We'll see how the news comes out throughout the week and everything. I put him here for now. Could go a little bit lower as the week goes along, but you can see the Vegas implied point total is quite high for Washington. I should say here actually though, and now this line's probably these. Spread, the implied point total is probably going to change. Terry McLaurin, it seems like, is almost certainly going to be missing this week based on the most recent reporting. So I am getting a little bit concerned for Washington. This just might be like an ugly game, but I still think they'll probably end up being favored to win based on how Atlanta played last week, even with those injuries. Drake May going up against Carolina. He's been good. Let's play him. Brock Purdy, assuming he's back. I think he will be. Going up against Jacksonville. Let's play him. Although, I don't know. Is that Jacksonville defense, somehow actually good? I don't think so. We'll see, right? That's going to bring us on to this second tier, where there will be some surprises within this tier. We're going to start out with two guys who have been, based on what they've done throughout the season, definitely deserve to be up here, as well as one more that I have lower, Daniel Jones. We'll get to him. But Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield going up against Baltimore, going up against Philadelphia. Not the best scoring matchups, not the best implied point totals. So just a little bit of concern for them, especially for Baker Mayfield with the loss of Mike Evans. And then, when we get to the wide receiver video, I'll talk a little bit about the top target, most likely Igbuka, even with Chris Godwin coming back. I think probably Quinyon Mitchell. I think he'll be the guy that they'll target to cover with their game plan, because he's the one also, just on top of maybe that's the right idea to do. There's two other factors. First of all, Chris Godwin, not a for sure thing to come back. So why would you game plan against a not sure thing when you know Igbuka is going to be the guy? Second of all, I think Igbuka, the bigger deep threat, they've been putting Quinyon Mitchell on the deep threats. So, got some concerns there. We'll get to that in the wide receiver video, but just for Baker Mayfield, too, that might really make things tough. Luckily, they do have a deep wide receiver room, and hopefully getting Chris Godwin back. Then we've got Bo Nix here. It's been a struggle so far for the season. This could be a get-right game against Cincinnati, and Vegas pretty much thinking that it should be. Will it all be by his arm? I don't know about that, but he got some running upside. I don't know. We're playing him probably. Justin Fields, I think there was a report that came out that Justin Fields, even if healthy or something, might not be playing this week. Is he getting sat? I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know how valid that report is or not. I didn't see it myself. I heard it referenced. But somebody who I'm currently ranking, I expect him to come back from his concussion and be the starter of the New York Jets offense. And with his rushing upside going up against the Miami defense, I'm willing to give him a go this week to hopefully get one of those upside games. Geno Smith going up against Chicago. It's a good matchup. He did well last week. I like him enough, and I like the matchup quite a bit. Matt Stafford's going to be my love of the week for the quarterback position going up against the Indianapolis Colts. He just did pretty well against a really good defense. I think he'll have an all right week. Kyler Murray, I've got sitting right behind that in front of this group of guys who might not necessarily always suggest playing Kyler Murray over, but I've got concerns with the matchups for the following three. Jared Goff going up against Cleveland. We just saw what they did week 1 against Joe Burrow. We saw what they did week 3 against Jordan Love. I have a certain amount of faith in Jared Goff, and that's why he's at the top of this tier, because of who they have with their personnel and everything and how they play. I think they're a little bit more balanced and more talented in the wide receiver room than the Green Bay Packers. So I do have a certain amount of faith that he'll be all right, and hopefully this week it's not 4 rushing touchdowns if you play him, and there's a little bit more passing touchdown work in there. Daniel Jones going up against the Los Angeles Rams through 2 weeks. I believe the worst defense for quarterback points scored against them. It's a really good defense, and I think it's one that could really match up well against Indianapolis and give them some real fits to Daniel Jones here for the first real time this season. Vegas a little bit concerned about the over-under there as well for Daniel Jones. So, or I should say the implied point total, not the highest there for DJ. I'm in agreement with that. And then Dak Prescott doesn't have CeeDee Lamb, going to have a limited... I think there's a limited upside here against Green Bay, a really, really tough matchup. I wish it was a little bit better of a matchup for George Pickens. He's still probably a go, but definitely I think bust potential there as well. So those are my 3 fades of the week. I might end up shuffling them up in here ahead of some of these guys at some point. I might hear some arguments or something that'll convince me throughout the week. But for now, I'm just going to put them at the end of this tier. I'm really not too optimistic overall about that group of guys. That brings us to this next little baby tier. Tua Tagovailoa, CJ Stroud, Sam Darnold, Bryce Young. We got some decent matchups for these guys. Vegas liking CJ Stroud, Tua Tagovailoa in terms of the implied point total. Sam Darnold, Bryce Young, New England, Arizona. Not too frightening of matchups, generally not afraid to play those guys. And then we get to a tier of guys who I'm a little bit more afraid to play, but we could get away with it hopefully. Michael Penix Jr., Trevor Lawrence, Jackson Dart I might end up getting him ahead of Trevor Lawrence and Michael. I don't know. I'm not getting too high up against him against the Los Angeles Chargers, which has been a really good defense. The implied point total, the point spread actually went a little bit worse for the New York Giants. I don't know if that'll change throughout the week. I looked at it very shortly after the news, so maybe it's already even changed a little bit more. I had Malik Neighbors really low in my rankings. I ended up bumping him up. I'm a little bit more excited about everything here with Jackson Dart for the New York Giants, but really tough matchup. I don't want to get over my skis. I'm putting him too high. I like these guys' matchups, and so he ends up kind of low this week. next week might be really nice. Then we've got Carson Wentz down here at the bottom of this tier going up against Pittsburgh. So it's a decent enough matchup that I think Carson Wentz could throw for a couple of touchdowns in. Then we've got the final tier: Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, Jake Browning, Spencer Rattler, and Cam Ward. Let's get on to the tight ends, where we actually have some usage news, some injury news, unfortunately, as well. All right, so for the tight ends, we've got some injuries. Colson Loveland has a chance to play after he exited that game, I think late in the first half it was. Then we've got Darren Waller. He is expected to be playing this week for the Miami Dolphins on a limited snap count. Basically, they have like one or two, a few, whatever, offensive, what am I trying to think of? Whatever the case, it's going to be limited for Darren Waller this week, so let's not get too excited about that. And then Jatavian Sanders, high ankle sprain, going to be missing some time. 3-4 weeks, pretty much the norm. Could be longer, could impact his play after he comes back for a little bit longer, but, we weren't getting crazy about that. Let's get on to guys that we care about here. We got Trey McBride at the top of this tier. I'll get over what we're looking at in these. Well, didn't we cover that? The only thing is here is targets. This is average targets per week for these guys. Otherwise, fantasy points is the same thing. It has a twist of consistency on a point scale of 0 to 36. Trey McBride, I believe, is at the top of the tight ends with 28 points on that scoring scale. But yeah, everything else pretty intuitive here, same as the quarterbacks, along with the addition of the targets or opportunities kind of column here. So Trey McBride is my tight end one this week going up against Seattle, which, if I recall, maybe this was the category Seattle's been dominated by tight ends, but especially at this early point in the season, the tight end fantasy points against data is so skewed to what tight ends did they go up against for the most part. Then we've got Brock Bowers, Jake Ferguson, Tucker Kraft, Tyler Warren to fill out this tier. So Jake Ferguson is going to be my love of the week for the tight ends going up against the Green Bay Packers. That reminds me, I didn't go over the quarterbacks' loves and fades. How did I do last week? I loved Mac Jones. He didn't quite come through. I faded Patrick Mahomes, and I think that we saw why that was. It was a pretty crappy quarterback week though in general. And then for my loves for the tight ends, I loved TJ Hawkinson. That definitely ended up coming true because of the quarterback change was why I loved him, and he got more targets and he came through and had a better week. And then I faded Jake Ferguson, but I actually removed that fade, and on top of that, who knows what would happen if CeeDee Lamb had stayed healthy that game. I guarantee you he wouldn't have had the same day that he had. He still might have had a good day, and that's why I did end up taking away the fade for him. But yeah, nonetheless, whatever. It was one of those things where I had to fade somebody, I felt like, and I didn't want to really fade anybody, so I ended up not fading anyone. Other than that, nice matchup for Brock Bowers, and then I got Tucker Kraft right behind that, kind of for the touchdown upside. I lean into the implied point total for tight ends, generally speaking, but of course there's some sort of balance between floor and ceiling, and Tyler Warren, he's just been good, so we'll continue to play him if we've got him for the most part. Then my second tier of tight ends, a little tier here, with Sam Laporta, Juwan Johnson, Zach Ertz, who I moved up with the McLaurin News, and Dalton Kincaid to finish this tier up. Once again, in terms of Kincaid, this is why I liked him in the offseason. Who knows how much this will sustain, but the touchdown upside is exactly generally why I like these Buffalo guys, and when they're in one of these matchups against a team like New Orleans, we expect them to get 4 touchdowns. If a team's going to have 4 touchdowns, I like to have parts of that offense. That's just how it be. Outside of that, I think the implied point total here for Detroit, holding Sam Laporta up here maybe in the rankings, a little bit of a safer floor. Juwan Johnson's been ultra safe. You see those targets outside of Jake Ferguson with that monstrous week. I mean, he's gotten the most consistent targets throughout. That reminds me, we got some interesting usage stuff to get through. So I guess bookmarks be darned. I'm not going to be able to bookmark this properly. Yes, interesting usage. While we were on Juwan Johnson, he had a season low route participation rate. Now that was a weird game, so maybe that had to do something with it. And then we've got Dalton Kincaid, we just talked about here. Dalton Kincaid gets targeted at a high rate when he's on the field, but his route participation is still on the low side. So he is, more touchdown reliant, but that's what makes him not a tier 1 guy, because once you get out of these top 2, 3, 5-ish tight ends, it's definitely touchdown reliant. Like Tucker Kraft definitely might be in that group yet. We don't know for sure on that one for now. I mean, we like it against Dallas, that touchdown upside this week. Nonetheless, other interesting usage stuff. This is, for the most part, taken from J.J. Zachariason's weekly info dump that he does after the Sunday games on Monday, early Monday. So Harold Fannon's route participation rate shrank in week 3. Hopefully that's not a pattern that continues, so we'll see on that. Tucker Kraft's injury might have kept him off of the field a little bit more in week 3, but not by much. Chig Okonkwo's route share went down significantly in week 3, though he did produce well. But the route share went down. That's not always, a great sign, of course. TJ Hawkinson got 25% of the target share. Thank you, Carson Wentz. We'll look for that to possibly continue this week. Kyle Pitts continues a really high route participation rate, which you love your guys being on the field. That's the first step to being able to be productive. And so he had a 96% route participation rate in week 3. Los Angeles Chargers rookie tight end Oronde Gadsden ran one less step than Tyler Conklin did in his career debut. What I do want to point out here, because I know there's some groundswell for Oronde Gadsden, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, but beware a little bit. Will Dissly was out last week. I don't know if he's going to continue to be out or not exactly, but nonetheless, Will Dissly comes back. Tyler Conklin wasn't even their tight end 1. But in terms of Oronde Gadsden, really, really interesting rookie prospect, kind of in the Harold Fannin-esque type of grouping in terms of what you can do with him. A very versatile weapon, fullback, tight end, move tight end. You can do a lot with him. And in the preseason, they did do quite a bit with him. He got quite involved, and he was quite productive with the opportunities that he got. That's preseason, yes, but it's a step towards in the right direction if you're doing well during that stuff. So he's a very interesting prospect, deeper league kind of target only, I would say. So there we go. Now we got our loves, we got our fades, we got our interesting usage. We covered the injuries before. Let's get on to this third tier of tight ends, like the last group of guys. Nope, not quite the last group. So this tier has Travis Kelce, Hunter Henry, Dallas Goedert as my tight end. 12 by Pitts, Harold Fannin Jr. I still have one spot ahead of David Njoku, but that could be flipping by the time we get here again next week. Mark Andrews right behind that, and TJ Hawkinson going up against Pittsburgh. I feel comfortable enough playing TJ Hawkinson, but I gave the touchdown upside to Mark Andrews over him. Maybe this is a mistake having these guys, but they did get targeted still pretty heavily last week against Green Bay. Just, no touchdown. It wasn't very efficient on those targets or anything like that. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you on this tier. I mean, Hunter Henry, obviously, a lot of people might be playing him, get excited about it. It was a very, very good week. So far this season has been very boom or bust, which is what his history has been. I think he'll be a little bit more consistent this year, so I am buying into it more than I have in the past. Dallas Goedert, I like him against Tampa Bay this week, but, because of the targets, I just had to push him down a little bit compared to where I ultimately kind of wanted to rank him. That's going to bring us on to this next tier here, which is Brenton Strange, Chig Okonkwo, Dalton Schultz kind of making it in here. The last group of guys who are usable. I'm not going to lie. I'm tempted, at least in one of my leagues where I have Harold Fannin, because I had things, injury or drafting Colson Loveland. In 2 different leagues that I have Harold Fannin in now, I might swap out Brenton Strange for Harold Fannin if he's available in one of those leagues. That might be something I'll do. And, I won't be surprised if Brenton Strange has another solid week. That'll bring us on to the rest of the guys here. I do have my fade in the rest of the guys group, because I know there's going to be some talk about Cade Otton this week. and generally somebody who I was too high on, so at least so far in the offseason, and even with my rankings, maybe a little bit too at times so far on the season. But this week, I'm going to fade him right when we think he's going to get a chance with Mike Evans being out, Chris Godwin coming back, possibly coming back, almost certainly going to be limited if he does come back. The thing is, he's going up against Philadelphia. They've got really good linebackers. They make it tough on tight ends. One of the best units against tight ends, generally speaking, I believe at least. So I think there's going to be a groundswell to start Cade Otton as like a sneaky play this week. I don't like it because of the matchup. I think you're not looking at the whole picture when we're suggesting Cade Otton. But nonetheless, there is, a little more upside to him this week just in terms of opportunity, possibly. I don't know. I like to avoid tight ends against Philadelphia. And then, of course, Cole Kmet might move up my rankings if Colson Loveland is, in fact, out this week. Currently ranking him. I mean, Mason Taylor I kept up here a little bit because of the matchup there. Jonnu Smith, if you got to play a guy, you got to play a guy. Darren Waller I've got down here. Isaiah Likely I've got one spot ahead of Darren Waller. I don't know what to do week one. Him coming back might be limited in his coming back. He is a guy, though, that I would be interested in having on my rosters. I have him in one of my leagues on my bench, well, in my IR spot. Actually on my bench. All right, Evan Ingram, George Kittle, Jatavian Sanders, Will Dissly, none of them currently being ranked. There you go. That is it for the quarterbacks and the tight ends. Thank you so very much. If you liked the video, please like it. Subscribe to the channel. If you got anything that you want to say about any of the rankings, somebody you think you should be higher, somebody you think I'm too high on, I love to hear it. Put it in the comments. I'll take it into consideration. These rankings will be updated throughout the week. As you can see, updated weekly rankings up on the website, www.theffforge.com. There should be a link in the description as well, directly to these rankings, but they get updated throughout the week, and you can also find them live up on the screen here when I stream on YouTube here, of course, on Thursdays, 1 hour to 1 hour and a half prior to kickoff, and Sunday mornings, 3 hours prior to kickoff, although this week we've got an early Sunday morning game, so I'll probably just be going live early, or maybe I'll have to do a Saturday night start-sit quick one or something. All right. Thank you very, very much for tuning on in. Have a good one. Bye-bye.